Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. Good morning to the folks that are joining us from across the pond, and good afternoon to everyone joining us from this side of the world. As Ali mentioned, my name is Dhia. I'm a manager of customer success here at Hivebrite, and I've been at the company, I think, for the past 6 years. Tobias and I have worked together for so many years, I think 3 or 4 years, and we're still counting, hopefully. And it's always a pleasure, Tobias, to share the virtual stage with you. Tobias leads the community offer of the Bosch Alumni Network, which happens to be, as I just said, a long-standing customer of Hivebrite. We bring the Bosch Alumni Network brings together former and current fellows, grantees, and even staff members of the Robert Bosch Stiftung and its partners. But I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I'll let you, Tobias, present some of that too.
Thank you, Dia. Yes, my name is Tobias. Working from Berlin, so I was pretty happy to see the first person joining the room from Berlin as well. And Dia, what can I say? It's not our first webinar we're having together. Luckily, it's not our first chat we're having together on topics of networks, of communities, of tech. Always a pleasure. And I'm very happy and very excited to see how many people are joining the room to spend the next hour with us to discuss all these matters today on decentralized networks.
Awesome. Well, you just got us right in, right? I was just saying that you all connect network members with common interests and obviously different backgrounds to foster cross-sectoral exchange and international collaboration within the Bosch Alumni Network, right? All of this, though, you're doing it in a decentralized community model. So let me maybe start with that first question. What exactly is a decentralized community module? And how does it really differ, Tobias, from a traditional kind of say like top-down community management approach?
Good question. Thank you for that. Let me start with a rather theoretical answer, very brief one, to then immediately break down what this actually means. So you could say that a decentralized community model is a way of organizing and running, of course, a community where power, decision-making, and responsibility are distributed among members rather than concentrated in a single central authority. So what this means for us, as you just very rightly said, we bring together a lot of alumni of one of the leading German foundations called Bosch Stiftung. And they are from so many different areas, countries, ages, interest topics. So they are from basically everywhere. And what we did from the beginning on was to create very autonomous, let's say, digital homes for these people so that they have a space, first of all, to feel at home at the platform, to find people where they know they are most likely like-minded because they went through the same program, for example. And then we created rooms for working on topics. So the members find a lot that they are genuinely interested in on the platform. Plus, from the beginning on, we created opportunities, a lot of opportunities for the members to share the power. What I just said, it's a question of who organizes decision making, who is responsible for things, and there's nothing that's run completely by us as the central entity in the middle, but the members are always in there. So of course somebody has to pay the bill, that's us, but still it doesn't mean it's our network. It's not. So basically, when you want to boil it down, the main difference and the main USP of the Bosch Alumni Network is it's the network of the members. It really is.
Yeah. So I was actually just thinking about a proverb in the back of my head. It's a community by the people for the people, but in just the sense paid by yours truly, right?
Yes, yes. Luckily, we do get money from the Bosch Foundation, so that they know the people that they have funded in let's say 20 years back, or 5 years back, or 30 years back, that they have a chance to still be in contact without having to rely on any WhatsApp group or whatever.
Yeah. So I think thank you so much for that. I think you covered a little bit also about the why behind it. It's you mentioned a little bit that it's historical, it's also how the programs have always been run, right? The difference of the ages, the difference of the regions. People are all over the world now with all the transportation, so it just makes sense also for having so many volunteers all over the place. But I want to focus here a little bit about some of the advantages of this module. Can you walk us a little bit on how do you see these advantages in your everyday life or every time that you circle back on the structure and the decentralization that you put in place?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I when it was let me put the other way around. When I was preparing for what we want to discuss today, I felt like let's ask uh, AI what an answer to such a question would be. And I found the answer quite suiting, but very buzzword heavy. But I want to share it. Just humor me for the minute. So the buzzword answer would be that this approach provides higher member ownership and engagement, greater diversity, ideas and initiatives, resilience and adaptability, empowerment and skill development, and a stronger sense of belonging. I was like, okay, this is super buzzword heavy. Still, there's a lot of truth in it, and what it means in our case is that we want to enable the members to collectively address grand challenges that we're having. And there is a distinction, which for a minute it will be a bit more philosophical, between so-called cloud-like and clock-like problems and challenges and solutions to this. So we're very used to thinking, we were brought up in a way of thinking that things can be fixed if we understand the challenge. What we are facing though and experiencing though for the last decades is that challenges become ever so much more complex, confusing, and big. And it just completely blows our mind when we try to understand how we can fix this in a mechanical way, where there is the one mechanic, a very big and able mechanic with a lot of money and resources, and that fixes the problems. And this doesn't work. And we experienced that altogether. We experienced that. So this is where the Bosch Alumni Network really sees and experiences a lot of benefit, because we can have this platform where so many different people are connected. They are working on so many different, sometimes small, sometimes bigger parts of the solution. So it's never the one thing that solves anything. And it's hard to measure. So perhaps later on you might want to ask, what's the downside of this also great
I'm coming to it.
decentralized
Yeah.
thing? Of course, there's downsides and challenges. So we had to let go of control. We cannot simply say we put in A, we let it work for time B, and then the result will be C. But we see that there's so much creativity happening, because there's this so-called this room for serendipity, for opportunity, for people to come together, and they really create solutions, not for the big thing, but for so many different smaller parts of it. And together, this really creates impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to also process things in my head about this. Like it's just like whenever you go into a brainstorming room or session and everyone just asks you like there's no critique here. You can create the chaos that you want to do, right? There's no specific structure to things. I know that that's not exactly this, but there's still structure to the platform. We're going to talk a little bit about it later, but it's somehow very simple in terms of you let the people or you let the community members tackle the projects that you want to tackle themselves, brainstorm together, come together with that structure that we'll talk about it a little bit later. And eventually that's where you see most of the impact. And there's something that you specifically said here, which was letting go. I think we're all raised specifically more in the West, right? There's all this culture shift where West equals being in charge and maybe East equals a little bit letting go, right? So there's a little bit that kind of unnatural aspect of what we've been raised on, which we always need to be in control. So here I'm coming to your question, which is some of the challenges. So what are some of the challenges that you see with this approach? I know letting go can be a good thing, but it can also be a little bit of a challenge. How do you keep everyone connected to the same mission is also something that I'm interested in while there's those benefits and those challenges.
They're tough challenges. I mean, no reason to like soften it a little bit because of course we feel like we don't know what comes out of this, or we feel like I think this is not going to work. But how do you put yourself in then to say, I don't think this is going to work? But perhaps we are wrong, but we are so, we have expectations. And what we learned is if we let go, some things will absolutely not work out in the end. But most often, the people know better than we do. I mean, if it's something that's completely in my sphere of expertise or in my everyday life bubble, I might be a reliable resource. But when it comes to topics that I don't really know about, or topics that are in areas, even geographical areas
Mm,
that I don't really know about, the people on the ground, they know better. They know really what's working, their structures are, what the needs are, what the ecosystem are that they are working in. So this moment of letting go is a challenge. Plus this centralized structure that we talked about in the beginning, that's a structure that we're all used to. So even alumni networks from huge universities, they are normally structured with a center in the middle. And people are so used to ask the question, what am I allowed to do? What am I supposed to do? And to enable them and to encourage them simply to do without exploiting the system, because that's a fear as well, of course. If we let go, people might exploit what we're having there, might call for funds and then don't deliver. So how can we really create this trust on both sides? That's not easy. So let me add two other things. For us, it's hard to evaluate where do we have to improve the structure, or is the structure as it is it good enough? Where does it need more support? Where does it need more tech? Where does it need more whatever? Or where is it better if we just step a step back? And of course, it's super hard, the more centralized it gets, to really have an understanding of what is happening in the network. Where do we not see something that is a structural, even a damage perhaps, or a structural mistake? Where do we not see that something is already working super well? Where don't we see impact that might be highlighted somewhere? Where don't we see people that are working on something and they are almost there and they just need a little bit of help, and we have this help in the network, but how do we make these areas meet each other? Do we need to be the middle person that connects these
facilitator.
dots, or do we open a room for this, or do we have an AI or whatever service that sees this and connects this? So there's a lot of challenges, and the answer, I guess, we might perhaps get there. Part of the answer is that we try to listen to the members a lot to try to get a grip on this.
Yeah, yeah, with also coming back to the right level of support, and if I'm translating that also, that's yes for support, but also it's a little bit of structure too, whereby and also expectation management, whereby you're telling the users, hey, you're free to do obviously things within the global code of conduct of the community and the global kind of way of doing things, but after that you're just completely free of connecting the dots on your own. I think the right level of support is a tricky part because you don't know every time, do I want to intervene at all times? Do I want to be like the sun somehow trying to shine on every single group and every single discussion on the community? But also it's I feel, and this is also a struggle for a lot of community managers and community strategists is even though you're trying to be at every single conversation, to be at every single comment or every single forum discussion or whatever that might be, there's always pieces of the platform, and here I'm talking just about the technology that you just cannot see, like the that me texting Ali on the side in the community, that's something obviously private you won't be able to see. And those are, you just have to trust that whatever structure, even that it's maybe a little bit minimal, and with the expectation management that you put in place, everything would just tie up into one good community in that sense.
Yeah.
So
And we made some real good experience with creating a lot of spaces where we really don't we'll go there, we don't look there. It's theirs, it's their rooms. That starts with private messages, of course, where there is technically, as far as I know, no possible way that we can listen in, and we
yeah,
don't want to. It's absolutely out of place. It's their area. Same with postings and comments and stuff like that. Perhaps we see some, but mainly, or the groups, it's mainly for the members and for them to meet and to do things autonomously. Of course, we do have a code of conduct, and this is absolutely to be adhered to. So if people do have values for the network, shared values, we do have a code of conduct. If people are not adhering to these, then of course there will be reactions. Not exclusively from our side. There is a group on the platform in the network consisting of people from our coordination team, but as well from the network. It's simple network members where these things then can be discussed. If somebody broke one of the code of conduct rules or posted something that really goes against our values.
yeah,
Luckily, so far, there has been hardly any topic. Of course, after 8 years and almost 10,000 members, yes, we do have topics and we did have topics, but luckily, knock on wood, not that many. But
yeah,
having this two things, like rules on the one hand and a lot of do what you want on the other hand, this already works. And to add one more thing, we do have we have micro grants, for example, and we can support projects with these micro grants. There are events where there is a bit of support from our ends, or there are events that are organized by the coordination team together with members, but mainly coordinated by us. And in these things, of course, there are expectations and rules as well. So if somebody receives a microfund for a project, then there are some strings attached. Not about how they do things, but that they should have a report afterwards, perhaps, or that they should organize it in a sustainable way, things like that.
yeah. Yeah, I that brings some memories, because I think as soon as you rolled that out, we had the conversation together about how can people report back on those micro grants that they got, right? I've got a micro grant to do something somewhere in the world. How am I going to go back and tell the community, but also the central team that gave me that micro grant, on the impact that I put in place and how successful was that? And by the way, if anyone is a little bit curious, I think Bosch Alumni Network, they're using the portfolios module for that, where users can put the reports there. But now we moved actually in the right way to talk a little bit about success here. So, and success and measuring impact, because the title of our webinar today is creating decentralized but also impactful communities, not just the decentralization itself. So let's change gears to some of the impact and some of the success. Tell me, how do you monitor, if that's the right word, how do you monitor the success of the different communities? Is there any impact stories that you can share with us? This also comes back to our first webinar together, which is the vanity metrics, right? We can look at likes as much as we want. We can look at the number of comments, the number of this, the number of that. But in reality, the truth lies behind that, and what those information are there. So tell us a little bit about how you measure that success.
It starts, of course, with not only what do we see, but what do we see as a success. So if we let's talk groups just to start somewhere. Is the success of a group measured in likes, in comments, in events, or is it measured in reports that tell us that they made a change, or is it perhaps already a success if the group is alive? So it that people moved into this digital room, made it theirs, felt comfy, and started the exchange. Perhaps exchange is the seed for something that grows later. Perhaps the mutual exchange in there creates a room for trust, creates a safer space. And it's not the only answer. I think it will be a bit longer an answer, but let me follow down that path for a second. If this is already a success, then we do have definitely several success stories that become very palpable when you check them for a little longer. So we do have groups, for example, where the trust grew over time, and where we brought together, sometimes as mentioned from our ends, in a coordinated way, people with a very specific profile. So, for example, we had an event that brought together women peacekeepers, a very specific group that is facing a lot of challenges, facing a lot of stress, not only because peacekeeping is a very emotional and stressful, I don't want to say job, but yeah. And if it's then women peacekeepers, it's even more special. So we brought them together. They found their safer space, and they don't need to learn something rational in there. They know how they do their job. That's not what they need. So they did not come in to learn the newest tricks. They came in to find people who are working at the same in the same area, who face the same challenges, who are sharing this emotional drain, this emptiness they sometimes felt, which would be the death for their work. And they re-energized themselves because they could exchange on that level in a safe space. And this would not easily be possible if you simply sample some people, bring them somewhere, and then expect some magic to happen. So this was something that grew over time. And the same structure or the same logic was visible, for example, when we brought together people who lead social impact organizations. They are sharing a lot of challenges that are very similar in different countries in different specific topics, which start from funding problems with overload of work, with stress level, with etc. etc. So bring them together and let them share what they do, what their experiences are, give them this emotional feeling of I am not alone in this. Sounds a bit phony, perhaps, but it really makes a difference because the people found a lot of energy in there, and then they know how the job is being done anyways, perhaps got a few more perspectives, but they went back to their social impact work with a lot of energy. So it's
Yeah.
not our impact that we did there, and it's hard to measure because we don't know when they bring in more impact in their impact work after a week, after a month, after a year. But most likely, this event that re-energized them will translate into this impact, especially as the people who were part in these meetings, they kept in contact. So even way after the event, they were having calls. They were meeting each other on purpose or just by the way, I'm in your city on this level. So this is a lot of impact that we can perhaps see, perhaps only assume if we have been partly involved in the organization of this event, but sometimes these things are just being organized by the members on their own. So if there's a little bit of funding from our ends, then of course our mechanisms kick in, that there is a report afterwards that we talk to them, and then we see this. So lengthy answer, and we do have more measurement things as well, but this is one part of the answer.
Yeah. No, that's definitely not a lengthy answer. I think we all needed to hear everything that you had to say there. It's interesting because at this point, what you're saying is that the community is somehow, and maybe before I even say this, uh, to connect it with vanity metrics and the real measure of impact, right? Because we can all set up 10,000 KPIs and try to get them right. In this sentence, I'm just trying to say you can just go to that specific group and see that there was one event that just happened, right? And that was like maybe 5 months ago or 4 months ago. And then the next event is scheduled in 2 or 3 months. And you might be just wondering that things are not working out, right? But then if you come back and you actually try to dig a little bit deeper and talk to a couple of those people, then what you just were telling us is that the community is offering some kind of emotional support to its members, whether with the example that you brought with the peacekeepers, with the women peacekeepers, or with the example of the social impact, because they're getting energized because of a social push or because of a gathering that they just had, whether they organize it themselves or whether you were the facilitator to organize it for them. Um, so that's pretty interesting. How do you and I'm just I saw a question come up in the Q&A, and that's exactly how where I'm going later. Is so you're looking at this information, but how are you actually getting that feedback from the users? The question on the Q&A was really how are you surveying them that often? Do you have people that speak to them? So tell us a little bit about that.
Various answers so various strands in one answer. We do have a coordination team that is coordinating the Bosch Alumni Network. This is a small team. It's about 7 people-ish. And they are, so none of them, I'm doing the comms, so I can say them. uh, None of them has a single week without speaking to members. It's
Mm,
just not happening. So there's always some call on something. So there's one way of exchange. Then, of course, there are post-event surveys that
mm,
are classical surveys that ask qualitative but quantitative questions as well. So we've got that covered as well. And we are in a pretty exciting moment of time for us because after the third year of the Bosch Alumni Network, so way back in time, we had a very substantive academic assessment of the network done by the University of Vienna. And they found a lot of qualitative things, but they found a lot of quantitative things as well. So I just checked up the number, and they found out, for example, that the amount of work that the members bring into the network equals to 37 full-time employments. Back then, I think we had 4 people in the coordination team, so they leveled 37
wow.
full-time equivalents in the network. This is a kind of thinking that we don't really like, but of course, it's nice to see this as well. And we will see what the numbers will be this time when we have almost double the size of the network. I think it was about 6,000 back then. So it's about double the size. Our team has grown as well, but not significantly. So we look into these numbers as well. There will be qualitative things as well. It will be stuff like how many people do you know? How many people did you get to know via the network that you didn't know somehow before? How many interactions do you have? What were significant changes? Just to give one example, we had a member who wanted to change her profession. So she looked up people who are working in that profession via the platform and just dropped them emails. And every single person answered, although none of them knew the sender before. They all answered. They all gave feedback on the professional questions, which eventually led to the sender to change her profession and to assume this new job in a new city in a new country that she didn't live in before. So she changed her entire life and got the support for that in the Bosch Alumni Network. And luckily, she was in exchange with us anyways. And then I think it was this classical situation, meeting for a coffee, and then she told us, "Do you know what?" And then the story came up. So it's a mix of a
Yeah,
lot of different
and that's
channels.
that's really interesting what you mentioned about the University of Vienna. So 7 people have leveled the work of, I think you mentioned 34,
37.
37. Yeah. So th 37 people have leveled the kind of responsibilities of 37 people, but just because the community is just so decentralized and every coordinator has like a specific kind of group or specific kind of region that they just have to speak to, the reach just becomes great, right? Like the reach, they can reach this country, you can reach this group, they can reach this specific event, and that way everything comes back to you and obviously gets fed back to the central organization to now report back every year. And by the way, for everyone who's attending today, Bosch Alumni Network has a yearly annual report, I think. So that's where you post all about the findings that you had in the year, how the community worked, the challenges, the opportunities for next year, and then that just becomes a cycle. So that's really interesting. So if we focus a little bit on those coordinators. How do you approach recruiting, and even a little bit deeper after the coordinating? How do you approach recruiting volunteer community managers? And what's really kind of the pitch that you use to get them excited about leading a certain part of the platform, or of not even talking about the platform, talking about community as a whole? And how do you like try to set them up for success? I know I just threw at you a bunch of different questions, but bear with me there.
Well, the most blatant answer, which of course is not the answer, would be we publish calls on the platform. We disseminate them via the weekly digest, for example. But that's of course not the answer. That's only the technicality. Um, we do have. Let me take one step back. We do have different. Let's call it dimensions where we have then group admins in a way. But this is only a technical term. We do have groups for regions, we have groups for specific topics, and we have groups for professions, for example. So it might, and for programs. Programs refer to what they have been supported by the foundation.
Yeah.
And so it might be that they bond because of this program, and they feel a lot of connection, emotional connection to these programs. So for them, it's not uh, out of place to be a spokesperson for this program. Neither is it for the region that they are from, because they feel very connected and would like to be this go-to person for this region or for the topic. Let's think climate change, for example, or sustainability. They want to create something on this topic or for their region. So we are in the lucky position that we can approach people who want to be approachable on the topic, who want to shine for the topic, who want to be active for the topic. So what we do is that we create these rules, these rooms, these opportunities to be this person, and then it's only a question of reaching them and seeing from the applications who's the best person for it.
Yeah. So if I would summarize that, it's more of a natural kind of elevation or push for that person to go from a normal quote unquote community member to now a member who is now a volunteer, who's probably leading a project, or who's probably feeling like he can add content and add context to that specific room, right? Because again, the community is decentralized. There's a lot of different projects. There's a lot of different aspects and rooms and subjects in general for everyone to somehow find his own taste, if that's the right word that I can use. Then it's a natural kind of transition to becoming a community manager. Um, how do you, I know you mentioned a little bit about groups and you mentioned the technicality of group admin. You also
Mm.
spoke a little bit about events and you spoke about the women peacekeepers and so on. So if I wrap that piece of the conversation back into here in the community managers, how do you specifically, and I know and I realize when I say this, like the Hivebrite tool is always going to be a tool, right? It's not going to be more than a tool because the tool's purpose is to accelerate, is to give you the means to get to your end. So how does the tool today or the Hivebrite tool today, more specifically events and groups, help you support the group admins or the community managers or the volunteers, but also broadly the decentralized model that you're running?
Good question. Good question. I can say that we would not. be able to run this thing without the setup that Hivebrite is providing us. So without the groups, it would not be possible to create this rooms and this feeling of at home for the members. So without that, our entire system would not work, period. Additionally, for the events section, for example, is super important for us because and the fact that not necessarily only admins can create events, but users can create events as well. So it gives a lot of power to the users because they can create something on their own without us in the middle. So this works as well. Purely technical, it's important for us to have a quite substantive number of group admins so that they are in the position to really administer the group, not just being there somehow. And we create a static page that says, if you want to know about customer success, ask Dhia. But you can be really in the position, in the driver's seat for the group, take responsibility, plus have the ownership that this is most of these roles in our system are on a yearly basis. So for this year, it's the group that you are not only in charge of, but that you can develop in the way that you feel suiting. So it's not your group, but you are like prima inter pares for this group, and
Yeah.
you can set up things, you can change things, and it's not to be run via us. And this gives a lot of opportunity and ownership to these members.
Yeah, that's good. So the coordinators obviously live on the platform or live on the tool. They have their talks outside of the tool, but also inside of it. But they also co-live in what we call the technical terms group administrating with the community managers. So each one would have kind of specific role. So that's really interesting. And I know you do have quite a lot. I think one of my biggest customers who has group administrators. So you're also my only customer. I just carry a small book of business, but you're my only customer who has a decentralized model. So it's always interesting to come to our meetings and to speak in that direction, and makes me shift my mind. So thank you so much, Tobias. I think you've given us so many good answers and so many good perspective and different perspective to decentralizing a community, but also while also keeping it in check. Expectation management, letting go is, I think, a word that it's going to be maybe my buzzwords as we're approaching the end of this year. But I want to take some time to also maybe Ali, if you wanna go through some of the Q&A.
Yep, absolutely. So we got some good questions in the chat here for both of you. Let's start here. Any common traits for identifying good coordinators? I think we hear kind of questions about that a lot in terms of like, how do you identify the people that you are going to kind of nominate to run components of your community?
It's a good and a tough question.
Yeah.
Just give me a second. Dankeschön. Um, just had to have somebody something handed in. Well, we are having these open calls, and then we do have a jury that is that consists of my colleagues from the coordination team, sometimes me, partly, and then other members of the network as well. So we do have, of course, we do have applications that we can assess, and then there's calls, and we just see what does the jury think is a good person, let's say for this job. So it's I we do have experience with that, sure. I mean, for years we have these roles, so therefore we have got a gut feeling what works, what not. Like if you interview for an open job position, but there is no hard set of rules, so we cannot say this is the thing.
Yeah.
And so it's fair to say you probably have a few people like making that decision once you're vetting folks
Yeah.
to be put in a particular position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a single person's decision.
Mhm.
Yeah. If I would add just a little bit on that, what I always tell my customers is that in either a coordinator role or a group manager role or a volunteer or a community manager that's starting off, it's always important to have someone who is open to listening to the community members, because that's where, especially with the context of Tobias and Bosch Alumni Network, most of the community, or most of the community members, feel some kind of an emotional attachment to the community itself too, and that comes along to the brand wanting to still be there and having that emotional attachment to the users. So eventually, I think someone who can portray that and transcribe that into his everyday life, his or her everyday life, with the conversations with users, is key for sure.
It is, and you just feel if a person is genuinely interested in this role. There's no, it's not like they get riches or whatever, so that is not the benefit. But you feel, do they want to do something for the topic or for the region? And this is something that we are looking for, that they're just the person for the job who really wants to make a difference on that.
Great. I think kind of another question related to admins, how do you handle the knowledge sharing and best practice exchange between coordinators?
We try to not be the person in the middle, which still we often are, of course, but we, for example, try to create handover situations so that it's not a siloed task that you assume, but that the person who did the job explains a little bit what went well, where were challenges, what did the person learn. We try to create additionally, for example, knowledge sharing pieces where people from a comparable role just depict how they in their group did A, B, C, D, E, whatever.
Mhm.
And so we see they had that approach, they had that approach, they had different results in there. So we try to open as many possibilities and doors for people to enact and to exchange on this. What we want to avoid is having a ever-growing static list of learnings, of best practices that people then would need to read, because most likely they won't. So we try to keep it as slim as possible and as personal as possible, so that really the people can exchange. And we create rooms for people who are having group admin roles, for example, on specific groups or in general on groups where they can exchange and support each other. So again, if they have a technical question, we are always there to support, but perhaps they can support each other.
I don't know, Ali, if you allow me to to touch
Yeah, please chime in.
on what he just said. That last piece is really interesting, Tobias, because if those coordinators or community managers eventually, or the volunteers, are using the same room or a different room that's comparable to the room where they live or where they usually interact with everyone else, they get to practice, or they get to use the tool firsthand also. And when they hear back the different community members, now they can relate easier to maybe a small limitation here, or maybe a great thing here that they just had. So I think the use of the same tool is also super important in what you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
It reminds me, I was talking to another customer who runs an alumni network, and they were saying the same thing. They have a group for group admins where they can kind of all speak to each other, so share resources, share kind of stories and questions. And it seems so obvious at the time, but I'm sure it's something that's like easily overlooked if you're just kind of focusing on organizing the community. So
Absolutely.
super interesting.
And still, I mean, it's a no-brainer when you think about it, but you have to think about, plus, who is now running this group? It's
Right.
again a no-brainer question, because you've got all the group admins in there, but who is really going in there and saying, let's meet, let's have a meeting on that day to exchange? It's not only a passive group where you can address a lot of people with your specific question, but perhaps it's an active group as well, where there are invitations. And is this our role, or do we need a group admin for the group admins, or does it happen naturally?
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure community by community, it really kind of changes with how much engagement's there. Again, who's kind of like picking up the role and facilitating a lot, or does that need to be designated as well? So it's, yeah, a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Another great question. This one is sort of about how your community got started. So what did you do to get initial momentum for the community to get it up and running in a decentralized way? Which I think we talked about at some of the early conversations for this webinar.
Yeah. I have to say I can only report from hearsay because that was before my time. I joined I think it was in the third or fourth year of the network. So I missed the Wild West period at the beginning. It was a lot of legwork. So as far as I heard, everybody who was connected to this, they knew there are 8,000, 10,000, 12,000, 15,000. Nobody really knew how many alumni from the foundation would be there. So there were so many. It was a question on how you count, plus who's having the contacts. So the contacts were somehow siloed somewhere with some people who were more in charge of this group, not Hivebrite group, but this group of people. So we talked to them, we tried to gather the addresses, and we created meetings. We flew to these groups when they were, for example, local groups. We created moments to explain what the plan was. And let me tell you that one. It was a very hard work, as far as I learned, to convince them that they should register for yet another platform, which is Hivebrite. But this, yeah, it's another platform thing. This was a lot of work. I mean, it's only one more profile, but people were like, I do have my LinkedIn, I do have my Facebook, I do have my whatever. Can we simply make a group there? So in the end, it all boiled down to gaining the momentum, because if you're having a network of 500, that's not really much. If you have a network of 5,000, that's way more easy to convince people, yeah, you should be in there as well. And in the beginning, it was checking which groups are rather huge, rather easily to activate because they know each other, they want something like this, and then as quickly as possible bring in as lively as possible a big amount of people to get this momentum of numbers and activity.
Makes a lot of sense. And then now, Dhia, I know we talk a lot about like SSO logon because we run into the same issue. People have already got their LinkedIn's, they've already got their kind of content and information up. So how can we make it easier to kind of like pull data and information from places where they might already be engaging? But there's a big difference we find in private networks and being able to kind of facilitate very meaningful, intimate conversations here versus what you would get on a LinkedIn group and a Facebook group and things like that.
Absolutely. One thing that also in relation to what you just said, Ali, is that even though with these groups or these rooms that the Bosch Alumni Network sets up for the community, and even though it was a little bit hard to convince the first, let's say, 10 batches or 100 batches of people, but then it became easier as the numbers grew and people saw interest. Tobias, we still see, I think we had the conversation, I think a year ago, where some groups are now happy with everything that they have to the point that now they want to white label everything as per their name, right? So they got an extra feature which is like the white labeling URL, and now they just want the URL would be, I don't know, like diacommunity.com, and then that's what they invite their members in. So it got to the extent from hard to get them to a sweet spot. They're here, they're doing great, to now they just want to take it on their own and continue that. So when you start the process, everything becomes kind of a hurdle. But as soon as you're out of that process and you've seen it, and now you're just looking back, you'll be like, oh, that wasn't easy. Maybe what I'm living now is a little bit more of a hell.
But it's nice that you're referring to this because it's an opportunity as well. So if you're not following down the logic that you just had, but on the same mechanism, the white label, for example, after so many years, and we're looking back on 40, 50 years of people support by the foundation, some groups, of course, created something on their own. This is natural when we talk about more than 10,000 people, that some of them just stood together and created something because they can, and it's getting easier and easier. It's not like we're having the 80s where it's super hard to create some hub of any kind. And if we want them on the platform as well, where they could mingle with all the others, then sometimes having a white label URL is it's quite a nice thing, because we can give them their URL they want to have or they want to keep. We can offer them to customize their group a little bit. We can even, if they want to, minimize their access to the entire network, so that they first of all start with moving from their home here to their home here. Only that this new home is part of a big building, which is called the Bosch Alumni Network, but so far they only move their homes and then slowly move into the entire building. And for this, it's really handy to have the white label URL, for example, or the opportunity in the backend to minimize or to stir their access, because in the beginning they might be confused or overwhelmed or whatever by so many opportunities. So make it for a brief or longer period of time easy for them to transition in, and then let them explore more and more and more.
Wonderful. Two more questions, and then I think we're almost up at time. So Tobias, question for you. Are there any mechanisms to ensure minority or underrepresented voices are heard in your decentralized setup?
Yes, there are. Still, the question back would be, what exactly is referred to with being heard? If it comes to decision making, yes, there are. If it comes to representation in juries, etc., yes, there are. It's not via hard numbers, where we do have a easy check that says in every group we need a person of that and that and that and that kind. But it's part of our values. We know that a lot of our members are very, very sensitive on that topic, and we make sure that they, as spokesperson, are there as well to minimize our blind spots. Because if we try to centrally organize these things and make sure we've got quotas or whatever, I'm pretty sure we would absolutely miss things. We would absolutely have pitfalls that everybody who is really much more in depth on this topic, they would predict that there is this blind spot and this pitfall, and we would just jump in because we didn't know better. So we make sure that there are others that are working with us and that are able to see more than we can see. So have way more eyes on the topic, have way more brains on the topic, and have way more perspectives on the topic in general of being seen and of representation. And
Wonderful.
of,
It
for
makes
example,
sense. So
yeah.
yeah.
And
Oh, I
for
was just
example,
going to say
double
involving
checking
them.
if the values, etc., are really mirroring what we want to mirror there.
Yeah. I was just going to say it's great to the point that you're making too is like making sure that they're involved in designing the process so that there aren't those blind spots. I think that's really powerful. Yeah, wonderful. And last question for you here. We love questions like this. What is one thing for you that's a winning factor in Hivebrite comparison to other tools? And anything that you feel like might be missing, our product team is listening here as well. But what I would say, what's one thing that really you feel like kind of shines and makes your life easier when using the product?
Was it a question for the audience or for the product team? Never mind. A question not to be answered. Okay, let's say, I think I said it before, but I cannot overemphasize this. The opportunity for members to really become active, not only in being heard, but in creating their spaces, so that we have the opportunity to create group admins and give them the rights to really put things in the groups, to change the groups, to give the group what the groups need. This is really important. It's very, I would say it's very bottom somehow. It's very basal, but it's super important for us.
I would just add to that the Bosch Alumni Network is one of the one in my book of business, one of the biggest communities who uses user events, not admin created events. So any user, along with the lines of getting heard and doing anything that like bringing people together, they can just click on a plus button and organize an event themselves in the location that they want, put the link that they want, and then the event happens and it's still recorded. Anyone can join it. I think that goes along also with what Tobias was just talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we are right about at time. Thank you so much for all of the questions, everyone in the audience today, for attending, for being here with us today. Tobias and Dhia, thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise. This was a really great deep dive session on decentralized communities. And I just have a couple of quick things before we wrap up for the audience. First of all, we will be sending you the recording of today's webinar along with some bonus resources via email, lots of kind of the Q&A wrapped up in a nice bow for you guys. If there were any questions that we didn't get to answer, I think we hit all of them, but if anything pops up afterwards, please feel free to hit reply to that email, and our team will get back to you ASAP. And thirdly, we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's session, any feedback, any particular topics you might want to see in the future. So again, feel free to hit reply on that email that directly goes to myself and Kat, who is behind the scenes helping coordinate today's webinar. We are getting ready for 2026. So again, as I mentioned, any topics, any folks you'd like to kind of see on a future Hivebrite webinar, we are all ears. And for our Hivebrite customers who are joining us today, I'm gonna, Kat actually dropped a link in the chat. Please join our customer community. It's a really great space where you can kind of get to connect with other community managers, learn from each other, and collaborate on topics that you want to see us share more on. So thanks so much again, everyone, for today. Have a great evening, and we will see you soon for our next webinar. Okay.
Thank you, Anna.
you.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Dhia. It was lovely as always.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tobias.